Okay, so we are going to get we're going to get started again with another polling question. We're going to wrap up topic 1, and then we'll move about health impacts and impacts on daily life, and then we'll shortly move into topic 2 and have our panelists. This is a new setup. See, we learn new things after even 22 meetings. There's always something new we learn. So while you're sitting here and while we wait for the rest of everyone to get back into the room, here's the question that you can think about. These are the broader issues related to autism, broader than the specific health effects. But what aspects of your or your loved one's daily life are most negatively affected by autism? And again, we'll ask you to choose up to three things. So we'll give you a few minutes just to think about this question. Okay, we'll let this go for a while. We'll give you a few more minutes to think about it. And if you're just joining in the room, we have a question about the aspects of daily life that are most negatively affected. As you think of this, what's most negatively affected and matters the most to you or your child? So it's just another polling question. Does anyone need a clicker or having trouble with their clickers? And if you're on the web, welcome back, and we encourage you to ask the polling question answer the polling question as well. Okay, another minute. Okay, let's go to the results. Okay, so the ability to participate or perform daily activities such as work, school, sports, etc., and the impact on relationships with family and friends have the most attention here in the room, and followed by ability to care for self or family, and then a range of other things. On the web?
On the web, we had 65% on ability to perform daily activities, 47% for ability to care for self, 18% for safety of self, 47% impacts on relations with friends and family, 56% on stigma and social discrimination, and 21% for emotional impacts and burden of medical care.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just spend a few minutes on this as a way to wrap up our discussion on the daily impacts of autism. And there are a couple that that I think we haven't heard as much about. So let's start with the risks to safety of self or others. For someone who identified that, can you elaborate or provide a bit more detail into that? Okay. Go ahead, Stuart.
Hi, I can. I'm going to bring this up, and it is connected to some other things. And in my son's instance, at the core, I believe, is his intellectual disability. My son has, when he was younger, walked into traffic, not mindful of cars, and behaving in a way that make me, as his father, very worried. My daily routine begins about 5:30 in the morning when I wake up. Shortly after, I get my son up, and I have to prepare him for the day. And every aspect of his routine is kind of a mirror of mine. I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom. I have to help him in the bathroom. I shave. I have to help him shave. I shower. I give him a bath. What I think regarding the safety point, every concern I would have about my personal safety, I have to think about his safety. If I am a certain distance from cars, I have to extend myself and think, where is he in relation to me? One of the major issues for many people on the spectrum is risk of life or injury from causes like drowning, from being in traffic, hit by cars, and Kylie can certainly talk to this because there are some studies on this, but this is one of the constant worries of parents, that you will turn around and your child will not be near you, and you will be going to the police and saying to the police, there is a missing young man, and they will, and you will be crazy. Just one more thing, I did get a call once from my wife on the safety issue. In my circumstances, we've been very fortunate. We haven't had a crisis, a terrible crisis, but I did get a call from my wife. She said, no one knows where Zach is. Somehow, school's been out and no one knows where he is. And I remember those moments vividly, walking to the metro and being terrified, absolutely terrified, and telling myself every minute that passes is 1 minute more when I'm less likely to see my son. Now, fortunately, he somehow got on the wrong bus, which I will say, he actually went where he was supposed to go, but the buses lined up in a different order. So he did exactly what he should have done. Everybody else did the wrong thing. But for a young man who can't speak, has an intellectual disability, 20-degree weather is a life hazard. And had he gotten off the bus, and had the bus driver not at some point realized that there was this young man who he didn't know, had my son gotten off the bus, the story could have gone much, much worse.
I think this illustrates the point about the individuality and the range of severity and disability. Makes us think about these questions in a different light. With that, can I ask, were there any self-advocates who identified risks of safety in the top? And I'll come. Okay. Okay. All right, then we'll move on here to, can't read your name. Joshua?
Hello, my name is Josh, and I have a 19-year-old son with high-functioning autism. So I want to echo first a couple things other people have said. First of all, the individuality of people with autism. So, even though Stuart's son and my son both have autism and are around the same age, they're very different, and their issues are very different. My son's issue has always been his the comorbid mood disorder he has with his autism, and we feel like that his mental health issues are much more impactful of him than things like repetitive behaviors and things like that. So, he's been on medication for mood, and the challenge we had is there were two younger siblings in the home, and he had extremely violent homicidal ideation. It was more, his rage was always directed to other people, particularly his younger siblings. So when he was 9, we had to make a difficult decision to move him into a residential placement, which we think now it was a hard decision, but it was the right decision for him and for his siblings. I think that the impact on relationships with friends and family, it's always been difficult for him and his siblings to have a relationship because their relationship was severed at an earlier age, and that's been something we've worked on over time. But I did want to say that my wife and I are very proud of our son right now, that he's taking classes at Montgomery College in radio broadcasting, which is his interest, and we're very proud that he's been able to do that. So, although there's ongoing challenges, we're very proud about some things he's been able to accomplish.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Okay, any questions from the FDA panel? Juliet?
Yes. Hi. I wanted to.
Bring it really close to you.
Okay. Is this better? Okay. First, thank you for bringing up the topic of the suicidal ideation. I think it's a very important topic. Actually, it's a very timely topic for us. We're looking into developing some guidance for developing drugs in this particular area and trying to better understand, self-injurious behavior and ideation and behavior, and suicidal behavior. And, so I think the needs of this community is unique, and I'd like to better understand. So, I think there's self-injurious behavior, and I wonder if it's related to intellectual disability and putting yourself in danger, or, more because of the comorbid. Yes, go ahead. I think you wanted to speak, Sarah.
We can go back to Sarah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I can wait. Oh, I guess I just wanted to draw a distinction between self-injurious behavior and self-harm. Okay. I guess from an internal perspective, they're really different. I have relatively normative IQ, and I do have self-injurious behaviors. And they're not motivated by the same things, if that makes any sense. Like it's not, I'm usually not actually trying to hurt myself. Like, that's not my intention at the time. That's not what I'm trying to do. It just sort of happens. And I know that sounds really weird, but
Actually, no, I don't think it sounds weird, and I think that's what we're better trying to understand. When we're looking at endpoints, should we not be as concerned about self-injurious behavior in that context versus ones that lead to ideation and, worst of all, attempts?
Oh, I mean, I think they're both big problems. I'm just not sure about, they're not, I don't think the cause is the same usually.
Okay, and you alluded to, the comorbid conditions, and so I was wondering, when those are treated more effectively, does that help with some of the suicidal thoughts and behaviors, or does it worsen it because some of the antidepressants actually, increase
So
suicide
I've been
risk?
taking different psychiatric medications since high school. I found that when my medication is working and I'm feeling less depressed and anxious, I'm more functional overall. It's a lot easier to leave the house. It's a lot easier to do things like go to school or hold down a job. It's absolutely, depression and anxiety are absolutely quality of life issues. And I think that improving them helps improve most of the difficulties associated, because you don't feel terrible. I don't know. It's yeah.
Sarah, thank you for sharing those thoughts. Juliet, do you have any more, or someone else?
I think you have another comment.
Zoe, please.
So a couple things about self-injury and then compulsive self-injurious behaviors. If someone is self-injuring, especially if they have limited communication, it's important to look into whether it is their reacting to something or trying to communicate that something is wrong. They may even be experiencing a medical condition such as an ear infection or chronic pain or migraines. And if someone isn't able to express that, then like that, oh, this is an anxiety thing for me, or I'm having migraines and I'm reacting to that. If you can give them a medication that stops the self-injury, but you don't know why it happened, the underlying cause may still be causing problems in their lives. So we see self-injury in people with a wide variety of disability expressions. And we've heard from our members, they've expressed concerns that they weren't evaluated for underlying issues at times when they could really have used treatment for something like migraines or for anxiety or a co-occurring psych disability that was related to their self-injury. Anecdotally, I find that a lot of autistic people also experience unwanted or compulsive body focus behaviors, such as picking their skin or pulling hair. And for a lot of us, these things can cause problems, and we may welcome more treatment options. But it's important that although these are like or would be classified as repetitive behaviors, we don't experience them the same way as we experience things like hand flapping or pacing or something like that. I mean, speaking only for myself and the people I've spoken to about this, but in general, those sort of unwanted compulsive body focus behaviors are a different experience. And I think that underlines the point that we need to talk about how we experience autistic traits rather than how they appear to others if we want to effectively look at what needs treatment options and what isn't a problem.
Okay. All right, Zoe, we'll be moving into the treatments. I think you're making a nice segue. If you weren't able to fully hear what Zoe was talking about, was let me see the importance of really addressing the co-occurring condition and figuring out what the challenge is, and the difference. I just want to make sure that everyone hears this: the difference between the unwanted or harmful repetitive behaviors versus the ones that are harmless. We do want to keep moving on. There was so much that we haven't yet talked about, and so I'm going to ask a favor of those of you in the room and on the web. There were some big issues that have come up, and we didn't cover them all in their entirety, like the intellectual disabilities or the suicide and self-harming behaviors, or how it really impacts daily life and what's most concerning to you in terms of the impact. So please, if you have a chance and feel comfortable doing so, write out a narrative to us and send it in through the public docket. It is really important to us to get those. As I said earlier, the comment summaries that we got in that you took the time to send us, some of you took the time to send us, have been so important. We don't get to use those in our report unless they get sent to our public record. So please do so and continue to send and get others in your networks, other self-advocates, other family members to submit those comments. With that, we might be able to address some of these issues in our topic 2 discussion, but I think we should move to hearing from 3 people who will kick off a discussion that's now more focused on treatments and treatment approaches. Brittany Rieger wasn't able to attend today, so that we have Kit Mead, Susan, and Tom, who will go and share different experiences and perspectives. And let's see how this works, to just do it from the tables with the microphone as close to as possible. And if anyone has a problem you can't hear or anything, let us know, and we'll see what we can do. So sorry to start with you, Kit, in this novel way, but can we start with Kit?
Okay, I'm Kit Mead. I'm an autistic self-advocate. I have co-occurring mental health disabilities, and I'm being tested for the connective tissue stuff called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is not, I don't know, hold on. Right now I work for the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education, but I'm here in my own capacity, and my comments are my own. I would like to start off by saying that autism, which I have, as I just said, is a complex neurotype variation in disability. It may be more difficult to predict what kind of drugs would even address our concerns, and many of my issues and concerns can also be addressed through accommodations and supports rather than drug-related treatments. In a general sense, drug development for autism is currently like risky because we don't really know how, there's not a lot of research into how autistic people react to certain medications, and there is a lot of anecdotal evidence that says like we have a higher sensitivity or other atypical reactions to a lot of meds. It could also take like the process of finding any drugs to like do anything could take an inordinate amount of time and resources that could be better spent on quality of life research and supports. And I think we touched on this in topic 1 a bit, but existing drugs like some of the antipsychotics that are currently used to treat like parts of like certain traits or whatever that are approved for irritability and autism, quote, they often have sedative or dangerous side effects, especially used long term. Like I'm on an antipsychotic, it's called Abilify, and I would like to get off of it because I don't feel like it is helpful. And it's an antipsychotic that might have serious health risks staying on it long term. Like generally speaking, they think it doesn't cause permanent movement disorders, but they're not like sure. And it also causes stuff like weird other stuff like akathisia, which is like, I'll get into that a little later. These drugs are often also used to suppress autistic traits, and when I say that, I mean they take away a lot of the things that help us cope. Like many forms of stimming, which is what a lot of, we've discussed what stimming is. It's what a lot of other autistics, myself included, call self-stimulatory behavior, and it often uses behavioral modifications to do so. Therapies intended to suppress autistic traits hurt autistic people. The mainstay of these therapies, applied behavioral analysis, only has any effectiveness, if any, before the age of 6. And we grow up past the age of 6. Surprisingly enough, apparently. And these therapies are more likely to use aversives, which are like things like sensory and physical punishment, and even contingent electric shock. So moving on to the kinds of things I would look for in any sort of treatment, I would look for things that improve my quality of life and that teach me skills that are considered useful for any person to have, rather than therapies focused on suppressing autistic traits. I would want therapies respectful of autonomy and ones that refrain from using aversives, which, as I said, include the use of seclusion, physical and sensory punishment, and contingent electric shock. I would also avoid anything marketed as a treatment that is unsafe. There are a lot of quack cures out on the market that the FDA has actually said are unsafe. So I don't want any support or treatment that tries to fix or cure me. I want one that respects my and others' right to make choices, even if we need support to make the choice. I also look at side effects, if it's going to improve my quality of life or provide me with useful skills, and if it's an individualized approach rather than a one-size-fits-all method. My main goal for any kind of supports and therapies is to maximize my ability to live in the community, a place of my choosing. Well, I currently do with some stuff like, my mom helped me set up bill pay and makes all my phone calls because I literally just can't really call people. I still wish I had more support at times to make it easier. I also feel like if I could better handle sensory issues, that would be like, cool. But I worry about something being marketed as really generalized so much as to be dangerous. And I would rather something that doesn't utterly remove or suppress these traits so much as provides support and accommodations to better work with the traits rather than against. For example, there are these headphones designed to control what kinds of sounds you hear around you. These are great for autistic people who have sensory issues with noise, but they're also pretty expensive, or I think they are anyway, and a lot of us can't afford them. And lastly, I wanted to mention a few kinds of supports and quality of life research that I think would help us, autistic people, as a community. More direct support for people to live independently in the community. Supported decision-making that is an alternative to conservatorship or guardianship. This means that the person with a disability chooses a person who will act as their supporter. The supporter can provide information about a potential choice, and the disabled person makes the final decision. And the disabled person actually makes the choice, and it's their choice, not I decided that I want this for my relative, so that's their choice now. Occupational therapy intended to help improve motor planning and skills and help with sensory issues. Peer training, supported employment, and adaptive and assistive technology for things such as communication or sensory needs. That's all I have for my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kit. Thank you. And on the note of the sensory issues, again, our sincere apologies about the echo that you hear. There's nothing we can do about it today, so we will have to bear with it. Again, there's a quiet room outside the hall and behind the hall if you need to if you need just a bit of quiet time. So with that, let's go to Susan.
Hi, my name's Susan Pinnell. Our son Ben, who is almost 10, was diagnosed with moderate autism at the age of 3. The most significant symptoms has impacted our life was his difficulty sleeping, staying asleep, and very intense behavioral problems. Intense hyperactivity, elopement, and difficulty in attending to any activity were our top 3 behavioral issues. Thankfully, a lot has changed in the last 7 years, and our life is very different. I'm happy to say Ben's doing great. He's in a general ed classroom with no supports. He sleeps at night and walks calmly beside me. He's grown and developed, but several therapies have significantly improved his autistic symptoms. In the preschool years, traditional therapies, OT, PT, and speech helped our son make gains, but pairing them with high-dose folinic acid, probiotics, and the Mito cocktail have greatly increased therapy gains. Because Ben was so sensitive to food dyes and he wasn't able to swallow pills, we had a lot of our meds compounded into a liquid form. We tried crushing pills, but the taste was so bad he couldn't swallow. We couldn't swallow it. From the age 5 to 8, we continued most therapies, but we got to reduce them to once a week. Ben's current treatment regimen treats the most significant symptoms of his autism. The Mito cocktail, a group of supplements, helps our son's body push key nutrients in his brain and helps build strong muscle mass. Folinic acid improves language and communication skills as well as processing speed. Methyl B12 shots are fuel to Ben's brain and work with folinic acid to support methylation and reduce oxidative stress. When we started the B12 shots, Ben's language exploded, especially with WH questions, and his sleep dramatically improved. Karate, which is something he loves, helps with his motor planning and his gross motor skills. Speech therapy has increased his expressive language and continues to develop advanced social skills. Auditory processing therapy helps with regulating his sensory system and helps him to talk in a normal tone. We think Ben's current treatments have worked extremely well, but his executive function skills and self-regulation skills are just not that of his typical peers. One pharmaceutical drug treating attention issues could only be used for 4 days because Ben got so overstimulated, started rolling on the floor. They called us and said, don't give it to him anymore, please. But we tried another drug for irritability, but after 3 months, his irritability got worse. We just haven't had a lot of success with a lot of those treatments. The downsides to our current treatments is that Ben does have to take a handful of pills several times a day, and if he doesn't, he does regress. So he gets tired of taking the pills and getting shots every 4 days, and it does break my heart when he sometimes chokes because the pills are so large that he has to take because they aren't child-sized pills. So the out-of-pocket costs that we've paid for therapies are super high. We've spent about 20 hours a week in therapy and about $20,000 a year devoted to his treatments. The ideal treatment plans for autism should be covered by our health insurance, and it would be easy to administer, affordable, and with few or no side effects. Ben doesn't tolerate artificial dyes, and we can eliminate them when we use our compounding pharmacy. So I'm concerned about future access to those therapies, and also know that all therapies don't fit to every child. So having them in a liquid form that children can take is super important as well. So I would love to see more research on these safe and effective treatments, and then also speed up the regulatory pathway for drug review. So our Chun has a P10 gene mutation, which affects his mTOR pathway. So we know that there's an immune suppressant drug showing progress in treating this pathway in mice. So for us, enrolling in a study with a strong immune suppressant with serious risk is something we're not ready to do until the research has been done and they've had success. So we don't want to do anything that could cause long-term harm for him. So it's been an honor to be with you, and I hope you have a great day, and I thank you for listening to our story.
Thank you, Susan. And I don't know if you noticed that Ben's picture is up and has been up. And finally, we will move to Tom, right here, to share your story. And hold the mic real
close.
Yeah,
Is this good? Okay. On behalf of my wife, Christine, and our son, Ned, I want to thank the Patient-Focused Drug Development Program for this opportunity today. Our son, Ned, will be 30 years old next month. He's autistic and minimally verbal with limited expressive communication ability. Ned has sensory reactions that can be extreme at times and appear without a readily apparent antecedent. Ned's sensory issues either cause or exacerbate frequent overactivity, agitation, anxiety, sleeplessness, and self-injurious behaviors. This is him, by the way, in a happy moment hanging out at Dunkin' Donuts on Saturday. When Ned is highly agitated or in apparent pain, it can be very difficult to pinpoint a cause. The cause may be internal, such as from constipation, allergies, or a headache. The cause may be an external trigger, such as noise, high-pitched sounds, brighter flashing lights, or even high humidity. At any given moment, any given cause of Ned's distress may be something intrinsic to his autism or wholly unrelated to autism. Ned has limited ability to give us a clue. Despite all this, Ned has continued to make progress. One small step at a time, he has shown increasing ability to communicate verbally. Over time, he has started to seek out ways in which to self-manage his anxiety and distress. I base this statement completely on my observations and those of my wife, our family, and Ned's residential and day habilitation staff. I wish I could offer you something more scientific. I will also add that, contrary to the popular image of persons with autism, Ned is socially oriented and enjoys the company of other people. His one primary interest, and it is a restricted interest, is singing. And as he gets older, he gets better and better at it. He's also been known to make a joke or two, although, again, you might have to be a close family member or a caregiver to know it. We began working with a psychopharmacologist when Ned was 5 years old because of what were, at the time, uncontrollable episodes of crying, laughing, and extreme overactivity that resulted in days and weeks at a time when neither Ned nor anybody else in the family could sleep. Over the next 10 years of Ned's life, a series of medications seemed to be moderately effective in helping Ned with these sleep and anxiety problems. However, at the age of 15, Ned experienced several months of deep crisis characterized by sleeplessness, extreme activity, and aggressions that posed a serious risk to his safety and that of others. On 2 occasions, Zoloft was prescribed but discontinued almost immediately when an apparent paradoxical reaction set in. At another point, a prescription of Klonopin also resulted in an almost immediate reaction of increased aggression. A prescription of Depakote was tried, but then abandoned when we concluded that Ned could not tolerate the laboratory blood draws necessary to monitor him properly. A prescription of Seroquel seemed effective for several months, but was accompanied by very significant weight gain. Ultimately, we worked with Ned's providers on a very carefully administered medication holiday that also helped reduce his weight. Since that time, now about 10 years, Ned has been on a core regimen that includes Ativan and Inderol prescribed for agitation and anxiety, and Trazodone for sleep. The one recent addition to this regimen is Kepra to prevent seizure. 5 months ago, Ned suffered a grand mal seizure for the first time, although at many points in his life he has exhibited small signs of what we as parents suspected might be seizure-like activity. Obtaining either an awake or asleep EEG on Ned has been impossible given his sensory defensiveness. None of Ned's medications eliminate agitation and anxiety, nor have they led to sustained, stable patterns of sleep. Observation data kept by Ned's group home and day program staff suggest that the medication regimen has helped to reduce the overall incidence of self-injurious behaviors and aggressions, and have helped Ned to get four or more hours of sleep on most nights, but have not eliminated the issues. How much of this degree of stability that the medications that we think that can be attributed to the medication can actually be attributed to them, as opposed to good daily management by Ned's caregivers, or because Ned is simply growing out of some of these behaviors, are open questions. So in conclusion, we've never expected miracles from medication therapy for Ned, and we do not expect them now. To this day, our first resort in times of crisis with him are physical activity, a good walk, and handing Ned some worry beads or some cards he can use for tactile stimulation. His daily safety and well-being depends above all on caring, astute caregiver staff who know when to give Ned his space and when to intervene more directly. However, Ned and people like him clearly have significant unmet medical needs. Despite the many challenges to drug development and neurology, patient-focused drug development to meet these needs is crucial. In fact, my hope is that the rigor which the FDA and the patient-focused drug development process can bring to the field will shape interventions for minimally verbal people with autism, not only in medication therapy, but in education services, in home and community-based services, and in built environments as well. We need to translate the daily experience and daily observations of autistic persons, their families, and their caregivers into actionable scientific insights through new evaluation tools, outcome measures and endpoints, and standards of care, whether or not this leads to successful drug development in the short term. I look forward to the patient-focused drug development process bringing a new rigor to the entire field of services for autism, for persons with autism in the years ahead.
Thank you very much, Tom. Can we have a round of applause for the three of you? Again, all wearing different hats, a self-advocate, a parent of a younger child, and a parent of an adult child, and also spanning the range of experiences and perspectives on the need for pharmaceutical and other treatments in your own personal situations. We hope that we have reflected a range, and I'll ask for a show of hands. Did you hear any part of your experiences or perspectives or frustrations in the three that were mentioned, that were raised today? Okay, good. Then again, we learned a lot through those comments, but now we would like to build. And I understand we get to go a little bit longer. We get to go to about 4:40. Okay, great. So we have, again, our discussion will focus on now approaches to managing the health effects of autism. And we want to start just by getting a sense of what you or your child is doing to help manage the effects of autism. And so we have another polling question for you in the room and for you on the web. Have you or your loved one ever used any of the following to help reduce the symptoms of autism? And here you can check all that apply. So A, if it's prescription medications of any sort that you would say, I'm doing that to target some effect of autism or a closely related co-occurring condition. B, psychotherapy and behavioral therapy. C, speech therapy. D, physical therapy. E, occupational therapy. F, diet modifications. And let's put in here diet modifications or supplements as well. G, some other therapy not mentioned. Or H, never used therapies. It's not surprising. There's a complex system of approaches to managing the health effects of autism, and we've heard that already. Let's just see. occupational therapy being the most prevalent here in the room, but several of them highly prevalent here in the room, with the physical therapy being the least prevalent. On the web?
On the web, it's just slightly different. The highest is speech therapy at 77%, followed by occupational therapy at 61%, and then physical therapy and diet modifications at 54% each.
Okay. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Tiffany.
So, for option A,
real close.
for option A, we've got anticonvulsants, psychiatric medications, that everything kind of all glommed in together. And, so in our division, we obviously regulate the psychiatric drug products, so things for anxiety or depression, and sleep drugs are under our purview too. So I guess I'm wondering, what portion of that 71% is going to come to us versus what's going to go to like neurology products with seizures. Yeah. So,
how about we do it this way? Let's yeah. So, so do you have a group of? Can you categorize them into, say, 3 different groups, and we can get a show of hands? Yeah. So you give the groups. So group 1 would be what kind of?
So I would think like mood and anxiety treatment, sleep, and then other, just for a starting point, I guess.
So can we have a show of hands of how many of? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, Zoe, you want to clarify something for us? It's coming. No, hang on. The microphone's coming.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with responding in this way to this question because we're not discussing symptoms of autism at this point. We're discussing co-occurring conditions. And they're common co-occurring conditions, but we're discussing some different things.
Yeah, but I'll tell you why I'm asking, because a lot of what I've heard, not just here, but just in general, is that folks on the spectrum tend to react differently to medications than folks who are neurotypical, and that I think it may be worthwhile to consider whether in designing trials we need to look at not just treatment of depression, but how about treatment of depression in autism?
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be really helpful. Just in terms of answering this question, I find it difficult to do because it says, have you used the following to reduce symptoms of autism? And it's tricky.
So we don't need to.
That's what we're talking about.
Can we try an approach where I want you to think about the drug that is most salient in your thinking about either being really helpful or surprised you in some way that it was not helpful or very harmful for you or your child, and talk about your experience. Again, we're not focusing on any particular treatment, but that way we can hear what treatments are on your mind as either being really helpful or in what way, let's say, helpful in providing benefit that, and tell them in what way, okay, yeah. And tell us in what way that was helpful. So let's start with any that come to mind that have been really helpful and why that has been helpful for you. So we'll start here. Oh, okay, we'll start with, and then we'll go to Jeannie. We'll start with Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica, and actually I'm a parent of a child with autism, and I also represent an organization with the STEM Foundation. Our kiddos, 94% of our kiddos have epilepsy, and we've seen a trend on if you catch those seizures, we've seen a lot of decrease in several different medications. Of course, it depends on what type of seizure they're having. So we have had some success in treating seizures and also sleep.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll go to Jeannie, and then.
I just.
Hold it real close.
Okay. I used a dietary supplement that was an anti-inflammatory. It's no longer on the market, called Anatoblock. When I was filing for the compassionate use expanded access deal, I didn't know, do I go to the division for neurology products or do I go to the division for psychiatric products? I mean, I really carefully tracked it, and it's been 4 years now. And it's an anti-inflammatory. It's not a psychiatric drug. So, and it also, I just want to respond, is that I do believe in the Greenspan philosophy that all behavior is communication, okay? But when I saw an anti-inflammatory stop and make my child a loving child once again, well, there was something more going on than just frustration. But again, I just know that this has been very, very successful, and I don't know which camp does it go in, neurology or psychiatric drugs.
Okay. So we'll go with Lynn, and then.
Yeah, I think that this was a very relevant point to discuss. What I wanted to say is that I thought it was very interesting that you mentioned prescription medications only as CNS drugs, because I have the feeling that maybe that's not the primary entry point to develop effective medication or personalized medication for people with ASD. What I mean by this is that we said that we needed to develop individualized endpoints. You also need to regard the development of treatments in an individualized manner, meaning that for right now, we're phenotyping or subclassing individuals with autism based on behavior and determining, adequate or prospective drugs while looking at these behaviors. And I think that behavioral observation does not offer an optimal or a sole insight into the molecular etiology of autism. And I think that to develop drugs that could have an effect in subpopulations of autism, you need to pay more attention to clinical sets of signs and symptoms, non-behavioral clinical sets of signs and symptoms, because that's going to offer you easier insight into molecular dysregulations, because dysregulations in autism, like in a lot of diseases, are ubiquitous. And so things that are expressed in the brain and that have a genetic origin also express themselves on a general ubiquitously on a general body level. And so kids who have gastrointestinal disorders, gastrointestinal disorders and gastroenterology can offer insight into potential targets in ASD. And I think that even though for 80% of autism we don't have the gene, they're idiopathic, these sets of clinical signs and symptoms can offer a lot of insight into a personalized approach to developing therapies.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. So we've heard about the immunomodulators from someone in topic from Cheryl in topic 1. The other just slipped my mind. The broader, beyond psychiatric medications. And we heard that in the comments that you sent in. Can we have a show of hands if you have a strong perspective on the need to look broader than psychiatric medicines? Can we won't get into it very much, but can we have a show of hands? Okay. So, but I think we want a little bit of feedback on some of the psychiatric medications. Go ahead, Tiffany.
I mean, I think that what's important is, you know, we've heard about comorbid conditions and how those can influence the expression of the symptoms of autism, and how that can, you know, there's like a downstream or a cascade of effects. So, but then we've also heard that, you know, I mean, in somebody who isn't able to communicate, something as simple as pain can, you know, also kick off that cascade. So, and actually the reason why I was sort of pushing for GI to be here, and I was really surprised on the previous poll to see that the GI symptoms were so low on the list, is because I had heard a number of times from folks who would say, you know, when my child or my loved one was, you know, having meltdowns or getting aggressive or whatever, you know, eventually we took them to a gastroenterologist and realized that they had all of these issues with constipation or, you know, some other GI thing. And I would always hear stories about GI problems, and dietary interventions and everything. So I was like, okay, well, let's get GI on the panel. But, you know, so it's not just the psychiatric medications. It's anything that might help to, you know, nip that cascade in the bud.
Are there any follow-up, anything you want to know specifically about any of the psychiatric medications or anything psychiatric? If you, yeah, sure. So we'll go here first.
All I want to say is that my son has what used to be called classic Asperger's, and I know that term's not used anymore, but last year he developed just severe anxiety, and to the point where my wife and I were panicked, and did everything we could think of to do. You know, I was always one of these guys, my son's not doing medication, right? And guess what? We got him on Paxil, and it made a huge difference. And the doctor said, you know, this is probably not going to work. We're going to have to go through a whole bunch of different iterations and drug combinations. I'm telling you, it changed his entire life. And I know that for a fact because he stopped doing it because we stopped checking on him, right? And he would take his pill at night, and all of a sudden his teacher called and said he was upset at school again, crying, and then we asked him. We said, you know, what's wrong, and have you been taking your pills? He said, oh, maybe I haven't. So from then on, we started watching him pretty closely, and it's made a huge difference. It really has. So there, Don.
Thanks, Don. We got a lot of hands raised, so let's keep going on this. Let's go there with Kylie.
Okay, so I will just briefly, Isaac currently takes 2 medications, lithium and Abilify, and he hates both of them. However, he hates being in the hospital more. And so that's the balance. You know, for the lithium, he does feel like it sort of takes away a little bit of his creativity, and I know that other people with mood disorders have said the same thing. For me as his mom, you know, I worry about the fact that it has a very narrow therapeutic window, and when you have someone who can dip down into depression with suicidal ideations, that's concerning. That, you know, he could take just a little bit more and it would be very harmful to him. The blood draw is, you know, he's willing to accept those, but it is a challenge. And then the Abilify, you know, he's on a very small dose of that, and it does seem to help him, but at the same time, his triglycerides are now horrible. And so now we're getting into those chronic, you know, dietary adult diseases. You know, is he going to end up with, you know, heart disease and things like that related to the triglycerides?
Thank you, Kylie. And I think Lee, and then we'll go here to Michael.
I just wanted to follow up with Tiffany was touching on, because I agree completely with where you were heading and your thought process about the core deficit of communication, and also I think social deficits combined lead to a very heightened anxiety. And I've been trying to keep track of how many times I'm hearing the word anxiety around the room. I think it's a universal understanding that it's a huge problem. And not only does it inhibit the effectiveness of like behavioral therapies and speech therapy and occupational therapy. When you're anxious, you can't respond to those effective behaviors, but it also contributes to the core deficit because it comes out in a decline in speech. So when my child is not anxious, he will operate at a certain baseline of communication disorder. By definition, he'll have a certain level of impairment. But when he's anxious, it will decline. When he's on an SSRI, it will improve. So same thing happens in the social situation. He has a certain level, a baseline of social deficit that can be improved with education and different things. But when he's anxious, he will decline in his ability to interact socially. So
Thank you, Leah.
I think the role of anxiety is important.
And is it Lee or Leah?
Leah.
Leah. And now we'll go to Michael.
So, okay, so this is a slightly challenging topic here, but when you're talking about using it to treat symptoms of autism or things like that, there's something really challenging about it, the way this whole issue is framed for me as someone, coming to deal with things that relate to potential pharmacology mostly probably here. And that is that when you're talking about symptoms of autism, autism is really a set of symptoms in the way it's defined. So you're talking about either those symptoms or symptoms of those symptoms, but really in one way, or that's one way you can think about it, but the other way is really all the things that define autism are symptoms of a neurodevelopmental difference. And so there's a distinction between what's a symptom of a certain set of symptoms that were one set of symptoms that neurodevelopmental difference made, and the actual neurodevelopmental condition underlying that, which has basically for everyone, I think it's pretty well shown that one way or another, there's a huge amount of symptoms that any given person has universally pretty much that doesn't, and they're not all the same for everyone, that doesn't just fit neatly into those diagnostic criteria. So one of the problems that comes as a consumer working with trying to treat the difficulties that I have as a person on the autism spectrum is that it's like stripping layers of an onion. So you get to a point where you can find a way of living with some sort of sense of cognitive difference in a way that doesn't produce a symptom that's any longer identified as being on the autism spectrum necessarily, but that doesn't mean that the cognitive difference has suddenly disappeared, and it doesn't mean that there aren't other symptoms of it. So, there's a sort of frustrating quality to that. So recently, for example, I've used lisinopril, for example, to deal with issues of high blood pressure. Well, that high blood pressure probably was a symptom of being on the autism spectrum. I'm not sure that the underlying neurodevelopmental disorder did or didn't impact it. I'm not sure exactly how the problem formed, but as anxiety increased and other things, you get this sort of byproduct. And as I take a medication for that, I have to look at how it's interacting with my ability to focus, function, and work through everyday life. And it impacts my disorder, even if it's not, so precisely related. So that's a real challenge. The other thing is, as a different perspective, I've also tried taking some medications that were designed for attention deficit disorder. Now, I fit criteria for attention deficit disorder, but they don't express exactly in the way that they usually do for people with ADHD. They express as basically autism spectrum symptoms that happen to lead to these sorts of things appearing pretty differently. And then if I take, let's say I take methylphenidate, in this case Concerta, and hoping that maybe I'll be able to focus better and work more in everyday life. Well, it makes me more awake, and it will make it so that I can focus on certain things better. But what's noticeable about that process is that I found I can't control a lot what I'm focusing on. And that's one issue that I've had being on the autism spectrum. It's related to the restricted interest criteria, I think. So when I take that, basically that means what I found is that now if I do take the methylphenidate, then I can focus even better on what I'm good at focusing on already. And that's not a bad thing, but it's also treating one aspect of an attention symptom and not another. So I just want to sort of throw out the idea that I think we have to get at these things in more nuanced ways and see how these things are actually expressing and look at it from, biological to in genotype to different sort of intermediate phenotypes to the condition to the sort of downstream consequences of it, and actually start like separating them out and giving us as people on the autism spectrum tools to look at those things for ourselves in ways that might be different from how outsiders would look at it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. We'll take a few more comments, and on the web, if you want to type in any comments on this thought in the thread that we've been talking about. But we'll go back here with Kit.
So hi, assuming I didn't get lost somewhere and like all the people talking, we're still on the psychiatric medications, right? Okay, good. I'm on several, and what I want to say is that like I think it's the side effects are like extremely serious for some, like hold on, like Abilify gave me akathisia, which is like an uncontrollable like it makes me want to like move all the time, but it's not like wanting to stim. It's like very different. It feels like it's kind of like restless leg syndrome, but like in everywhere and dialed up to 11. And some of my friends even ended up in like the ER after being on it because they ended up like they needed to move so much that they ran themselves into exhaustion. And they're not autistic, but they were on it for other reasons and it did that to them. But I feel like people aren't told about all the stuff that comes with drugs a lot because people want something that will solve all the problems, and if it has side effects, like that might deter people from using the thing. I'm not sure if I'm making a whole lot of sense, but
you absolutely are making sense. And Kit, you're bringing up something that we're going to be moving into about how you think about benefits versus the risks of the drugs.
And I think that medication, like all other treatments, should be a choice. If a person has any, like, if all people have some form of communication, and you should, like, and everyone has a right to have support to make their own decisions.
Thank you, Kit. We'll take one more back here.
Hello. Thank you, first of all, for having this public meeting. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I have a nephew. He's about 20. He's 26 right now, and he's very nonverbal. Every once in a while, we might be able to get a sentence or so out of him, out of the day somewhere to somebody who's very close to him. But my concern right now, and hearing what the self-advocates are saying, especially, has been really important in terms of being able to have medication that deals with the nuances of the things like the attention deficit, and what the young lady was saying in terms of the side effects. My nephew actually is in the process of going through major physical therapy and occupational therapy right now because of a very adverse side effect to a psychiatric medication, and he basically went through the state of paralysis. And in addition to the paralysis, severe pain was occurring, but because of his nonverbal ability, wasn't quite articulating it the best, pretty much at all, because the pain made him even more nonverbal. And he just sort of went within, and it wasn't until the paralysis actually occurred that we were aware of what this adverse reaction was. So I want to just support the young lady who was just speaking about the knowledge about the side effects are really, really crucial, because even the slightest side effect, adverse side of it, can affect not just that person's ability to deal with his or her autism, but also how that person is safe, how the family is adjusting to his well-being and his care, and how he's able to self-care as well. So just want to, like I said, advocate more knowledge and focus being up.
And what was your name? What's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Helene Fisher.
Helene. Thank you, Helene. Are we getting anything on the web?
Not as much about psychiatric medications,
or any
but
summary?
regarding sort of behavioral challenges such as anxiety and aggression. Several commenters have linked them to lack of sleep and sensory overstimulation. And for lack of sleep, a variety of sort of treatment options people have tried, including prescription medication, but also things like meditation or relaxation or music therapy or things like that. Similarly, for sensory overstimulation, trying to get systems at either school or in public places where they have headphones or other sorts of methods to control noise and lights and things like that.
Okay, thanks, Graham. All right, so we need to move on, but I have a few show of hands questions. If you feel comfortable raising your hands. We don't get to probe into the non-drug therapies. We did hear about various things throughout the discussion, but a couple questions. How many feel, here in the room today and on the web, please comment on this as well, feel that you as a self-advocate or your child, if you're if you're a family member, is managing their health as best as you can expect today? So they're managing autism and life as good as you could hope or expect or as you would want. Okay, so okay, let's try. What? Yes, that it's optimal. Whatever you're doing, however you're managing your symptoms, that it's optimal for you today, or if not optimal, as much as you could hope for, as much as you can expect. Show of hands. Okay. Great. Okay. Oh. Give us 1 second, Kit, and we'll come to you with the microphone.
Sorry, I thought I got mixed up and thought I was talking. Okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So can I ask the flip question? Then let's see. How many of you feel that your autism or your child's autism is not well managed or getting progressively worse? Okay, so there's a middle. Okay. Yep. So, okay. You want to explain the thinking?
So, as I was saying earlier, some of the things the treatments that my son has had have been very positive. There's a lot more I wish I could do, and so in the middle.
Okay, how many of you share? And was it Don? How many of you shared Don's perspective? Said much better than my two questions. Okay, all right. Then another. Bear with me for one more show of hands questions. How many of you feel that in your situation or your child's situation, that medical treatments for some aspects of autism are necessary? Some medical treatments. Any kind of medical treatments, yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask the flip side. How many of you feel that in your situation or in your child's situation that medical treatments are currently not necessary? That you can manage autism without needing medical treatments? Okay. We did get some comments in indicating that some of you thought that you didn't need medicines at this point, that you're doing that what how you are living and managing and other therapies you're taking meant that you didn't need any kind of medications. So it's just, okay, so a few people in the room feel that way. But most of you raised your hand to say that medication, some sort of medication, is necessary for you or your child in the current situation. Okay, go ahead,
that
Sarah.
question really confusing because I do take medication, but it's for anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation, and that's not the same thing as autism.
Okay.
Like, so I mean, when it comes to the question about what's optimal, I discussed when I was speaking on the panel, difficulty finding a psychiatrist who's competent in multiple, in DD and in psych stuff, but yeah, I just don't, the question doesn't make sense to me because I don't feel like my autism gets better or worse. It's just a fact, but my anxiety does get better or worse.
And that is an excellent point. Okay, we'll take one comment there to follow up on this.
No, I was just going to say I agree with Sarah, and I think that a lot of us are having that reaction that we don't know how to answer this question because, like, for me, I take medications and I need them, but I wouldn't describe them as medications that I take for autism or treatments of autism.
Okay, one more kid. Yeah, and wait, we'll let Tiffany ask a question.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So even though you take medications for things other than the autism, if those things are not under good control, do your symptoms of autism flare up? So, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, do you see them, even though it's not a direct treatment of autism, do you see it as being related?
I would say that, like, I wouldn't directly correlate them mostly because, like, the question was kind of confusing, but I'm trying to answer it anyway. So, like, basically, if I feel better mental health-wise, then, like, that means I just feel better generally. It doesn't mean that, like, my autistic traits are suddenly, like, better or worse. And sometimes my autistic traits can, like, like, when I hand flap, that makes me really happy, and it also helps with, like, a bunch of other stuff. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Okay.
I don't know how that's related.
Okay. Well, I think we have heard a very clear point made that it is difficult to talk about medical therapies in the same way that we might for other conditions. And so, do you have some? Okay. And so, Kit and Sarah and Zoe and the parents here in the room have all made this same point that it's not cut and dry. I think that's what we'll take from here. So to move on, we let's try. Can we try another polling question and see how you react to this one? And first of all, raise your hand if you want to answer this polling question, because we have another that we could go to. This might be, we don't have to take a polling question on this if there's, or talk a lot about it if you think that this would be a hard question to answer. Do you think you can answer this question? Okay, we're getting head nods, so let's do it. When considering treatment options, which of the following benefits would you or your loved one consider to be the most important? What you're looking for in a treatment would address the following aspects. A, reduced irritability or disruptive behaviors, and let's put in, Jeannie, I think, made the point earlier about aggression in that category. B, reduced cognitive impairment. C, reduced social impairment. D, reduced communication difficulties. E, reduced repetitive behaviors. F, reduced sleep issues. G, reduced depression or anxiety. And H, reduced gastrointestinal symptoms, or some other would be I. I can tell you while you're doing this, we learn so much from just asking the questions to see how you respond to the questions. That is so helpful, even if it's not getting exactly the answers that we thought we might get when we first started. So this is a good thing. Okay. Okay. So we have a mix with tying back to our discussion on the health effects that were the most challenging. If you could reduce communication difficulties, reduce depression or anxiety, that echoes what we've been hearing about. Reduce social impairments, reduced irritability, with much less on reduced repetitive behaviors. So I think it's reinforcing the input that you've already provided. I'll see if, are there any questions that you have about this? Okay. Okay. Let's get just a few comments, just very brief. In a few words, what were some of the other things that you'd want benefits out of a treatment? So a few things. We'll go to Kit and then Michael, and then if there's anyone.
So, I want a treatment that works with me and not against my autistic traits, but rather with them. And I would benefit. What I would want is that sorry, hold on. This question isn't as ideal as it could be for me, because a lot of my problems come from the fact that society is not society is discriminatory against autistic people. And some of my other problems come from not having supports that I need, instead of I don't want something that is going to say, oh well, we must fix the autism because that is clearly the only problem ever. I'm not going to I don't want that. So I put other.
Thank you, Kit. Before we go to Michael, one second. If we could take one or two callers on the phone very briefly. If you want to call in we'll ask if you've been following on the web and you want to call in about something about looking for what you want to get out of medical treatment that hasn't been mentioned yet. So if you have a unique perspective on that, we could tee up the phone for that. Okay, Michael, yes.
So for me, first of all, I echo Kit's perspective to some extent, but I also have a different feeling, and that is that what I would want to treat really would depend on the totality of the effect of the treatment. So I have neurodevelopmental differences, and some of them have given me things in life that I'm very, very happy about. And some of them have given me some very challenging things too. And so I don't necessarily know in all cases where the biology will separate between the two, and what kind of trade-offs. If something simply gives me the flexibility to interact in the world as if I was a person who didn't have a neurodevelopmental difference, but also gave me the flexibility to interact in the world and think and process things in the way that I do now, or have all the positive features, I would probably sign up for that very quickly. But there's this sort of dialogue that goes with the fact that some of the reasons that I probably have some of the positive features I do as a person may well exist because of the differences in how my brain's configured over time and stuff. So I just sort of throwing out the fact that I'm not averse to treating autism in terms of the diagnostic features of it. I might be averse to becoming typical.
Okay. I think you got a lot of apologies. Again, have I said before we're in a very new room configuration, so our apologies. So with that, let's just all take a moment. We have 5 more minutes left, okay? So we're not going to do any more scenario questions. I just want to see the FDA panel. You've been listening. Do you have any other burning questions that you want to ask? And it's okay if you don't. We have taken in a lot. Just want to check. Okay. We'll go to Cheryl, and then I want, if you haven't spoken yet and there's something really key on your mind and you'd like to, raise your hand high, and we will come to you for any final thoughts on ideal treatments, what you want out of a treatment, a medical treatment. But we'll go to Cheryl first.
A medical textbook changing study at the University of Virginia recently identified that the brain is directly connected to the peripheral immune system by previously unknown lymphatic vessels, and that these vessels may play a major role in every neurological condition that turns out to have an immune component. Additionally, multiple studies starting with a 2005 Johns Hopkins brain autopsy study have provided evidence that there is a chronic neuroinflammatory process in regions of the autistic brain caused by perpetually activated astrocytes and microglia, which police the brain for pathogens, as well as pro-inflammatory cytokine profiles in the brain and cerebrospinal fluid. And with such evidence of inflammation and immune issues associated with autistic brains, we need to be more focused on developing drugs to help the immune system, starting with immune modulators to stabilize and balance the immune system. Having an autism diagnosis should not be an excuse for a serious disease process to go untreated, ultimately compromising quality of life for many.
Thank you, Cheryl. Is there anyone on the phone? Okay, so we have one person on the phone, and I have to say, we have to follow protocol. Operator, can we have the next caller?
Yes, her name is Brenda Kosey. Brenda, your line is open.
Hi, Brenda. Brenda, are you there?
Brenda, is your line muted?
Yes, thank you. I would like medical treatment for what I've termed the foggy brain for my son, who is 12 in July, diagnosed at the age of 3.
Okay, all right.
We've had an MRI, and they say there's nothing worrisome about that. I don't know the medical term for it, but he definitely has what we call foggy brain, and it takes him to maybe 11 o'clock to come out of it, and that is impacting his school days.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Okay, so let's go here for, we have a few final comments. Thank you. And I forgot you pronounced it for me, but then I forgot.
Hi, my name is Suraksha Attila Sirio, and I was recently diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. So I was late diagnosed, and my concern is, like, for people who, are late diagnosed, or if there's like some kind of complications, many people usually have to wait 4 months to a year to get help, and that can be kind of challenging for someone who's like, waiting and waiting and waiting for get help, and it can be stressful and it can cause anxiety. Another issue of mine is that what is being done for people who have autism spectrum disorder that, I am high functioning, but, another issue is what is being done for people who are in the workforce and stuff like that, because not many employers understand, and then sometimes, like, they could be terminated or something wrongfully, and that is my concern.
Thank you so much for raising 2 important points that we didn't actually get into much today, so I thank you for that. So with that, I think we will close the, no, we're not closing the, no, not wrap up yet. No. According to the agenda, we're going to move into the open public comment session. And so, but the facilitated portion of the meeting has come to an end, and on behalf of my team, I want to give you a sincere thanks from the position with the hat of the facilitator. This has been a truly insightful meeting, and we'll let Mitch sum up. But it really has been, in even just how you reacted to questions is extremely insightful. It helps us communicate and have dialogue better with you. So a round of applause for all of you in the room. Please. And we thank you for contributing on the web as well. And with that, Meghana will do the open public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, let's see if, can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're now moving on to the open public comment session. And for those of you that are not aware, the purpose of this session is to allow an opportunity for those who have not had a chance to speak on issues that are not necessarily related to our two main discussion topics. This is also an opportunity for participants who are not individuals with autism or family members to comment as well. Please keep in mind that we will not be responding to your comments, but they will be transcribed and be part of the public record. Since we would like this to be a transparent process, we highly encourage you to note any financial interests that you have that are related to your comment. If you do not have such interests, you may state that for the record as well. And if you prefer not to provide this information, you may still provide your comments. We have collected sign up before the meeting and during the break. We have 8 participants signed up and about 12 minutes for this session, so please be respectful and stick to the 2-minute time limit. I will be keeping track of time, so if you approach that 2 minutes, I will be asking you to wrap up. So I'm going to quickly run through the order of the speakers, and I really apologize if I mispronounce your name. We have Jeannie Mcguire, Cheryl Henry, Fatima DeFors, Suraksha Attila Suryo, Joan Fallon, Sharon Walter, Leah Halverini, and Stuart Spellman. So first, could we please get a mic to Jeannie Mcguire, please?
Thank you for this opportunity to meet with you and to express our concerns. We sincerely hope we will be heard. Can you guys hear me? I think I've said enough before about my daughter and her severe problems. What I want to address here is that how close is that? Close enough, okay? Okay. Is what is the FDA? Your limitations in the sense of we can talk about medications and treatments, but at the end of the day, it's the funding. And what I've confronted in the situation with this dietary supplement for my daughter is that pharmaceutical companies don't want to fund things that they can't get a nice tight patent for that will last a long time. So if the remedy that's safe and effective just happens to be a simple, naturally occurring phytochemical, or maybe methyl B12 or something like that, well, there's no money out there to do the clinical studies to get to the IND and the NDA. We got a problem. And I don't know if you guys can answer that, but we've got a problem. I know you have the best interests, at heart, but we all have to work on this together to help, our kids or ourselves to find safe, effective treatments, because what we've got right now in this nation is not acceptable. And I want to say, we put a man on the moon. We could do better than risperidol and Abilify. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Now we'll have Cheryl.
I'm just a parent. Hi, Cheryl Henry. I've spoken a few times today of my 3 children and their constant battle to achieve and maintain neuroimmune health. In the past, many well-meaning medical practitioners often couldn't see past my child's autism diagnosis to test for possible underlying diseases and issues with seizures, strep, viruses, food allergies, and middle ear drainage went undiagnosed for years. Eventually, we found a doctor in the state of California who ordered the right tests, and we've seen improvements, but the available drug choices remain too limited. I mentioned before that we desperately need multiple immune modulators to be made available, but each needs to have extensive pre- and post-trial testing of every participant to identify which blood and other markers are shared by those on whom the drug was a success. We need antiviral drugs able to target antibodies for the entire human herpes virus family. These trials should be designed to guide physicians through every possible side effect and what to do in response, hopefully minimizing the number of patients taken off the drug because a side effect was mistaken for a reaction. An antiviral drug I'd hoped would now be available failed its trial for this reason. And we need every drug to be made available in a form which not only contains none of the 8 allergens, but also contains no dyes, no flavorings, no grains in any form such as rice starch, and no dairy in any form such as lactose, allowing people with autism or their caregivers to be certain that any reaction is to the drug, not an additive. Many people with immune issues, not just those who also have autism, would benefit from the above recommendations. And I'm happy to further discuss this with anybody at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Next, we have Fatima. She's still here. Fatima Dufours? No? Okay. Next, we have Suraksha Attila Suryo.
Hi again, this is Suriksha Tillisrio, and my comments and concerns are towards people who, you know, like I said earlier, about like employment and stuff like that. From what I've experienced recently is that it can be challenging when you're trying to communicate to your employer about what's going on and stuff like that, because sometimes they're not going to understand or anything like that, and then there's going to be more challenges because for me, the issue was trying to find someone, you know, trying to communicate with someone that would understand my needs. And then half the time I would be nervous and half the time I would be like apprehensive thinking that they were going to like go out to get me or something like that. And another issue is just being on a waiting list or waiting for care for people who have autism spectrum disorder. And it's important that they don't have to wait, you know, 4 months to a year and get the care that they need immediately. And like for me, I've been waiting since January, February, and you know, next week I'll be able to see someone, but it shouldn't take that long for someone to get care that they need because, you know, in that time frame they could like, you know, something bad could happen or, you know, they could end up, you know, in the hospital or something like that, God forbid. But on a personal standpoint, it's important for people to understand, and I think there needs to be more advocacy and that other people who don't know, so that education about this and there's like goes to the general public and there isn't a stigma towards this. Same thing with the depression, because I've had personal people that I've known tell me that depression is a choice or something like that. It's not. You know, it's like a mental disorder with autism spectrum disorder, and it's important to understand that everybody has their needs, and it's important to find those needs that are met. Thank you, and if anyone asks me more questions about it, feel free to.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Joan Fallon.
Thank you. I'm the CEO of a biotech company called CureMark, and we've been working on an enzyme drug for autism since 2005. Our drug has been granted fast track status by the agency, and we currently have a rolling NDA. And I just want to publicly thank the agency and Dr. Mathis in psychiatry and all his team and the GI division for all your guidance throughout this process. It's been very helpful to us. And I'm also very grateful to have the opportunity to be here with all of you and to hear from caregivers and parents and advocates and self-advocates about your journeys and your needs and your perspectives. And thank you to the agency for allowing me to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Next, we have Sharon Walter.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this fantastic event. I'm even closer to your. Thank you for hosting this fantastic event today. I am the mother of an 8-year-old girl with nonverbal, very low functioning, what I call medical autism. She has a lot of medical issues, including seizures, a lot of GI pain, undiagnosed, a lot of sleep issues. I also work in industry. I work in conducting clinical research for a pharmaceutical company in the setting of oncology. And what strikes me in that role, and it's not related to autism, but it strikes me that we have a number of agents in our pipeline, in our portfolio, that I think would be really effective potentially in treating children like my own, who actually has been tested and found to have a lot of autoimmune markers and immune dysfunction. And so I don't know if there's anything that you all can do, but I want to put it in your heads to think about ways to potentially encourage my colleagues in pharma
to really develop those drugs for children and adults with autism that have the sort of medical forms of this disorder. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Next, we have Leah.
Hi, my name is Leah Helvering. I'm here as a parent of a child who's 20, largely nonverbal. He was one of those regressive kids that developed normally and then lost all of his language. I do work in the pharmaceutical industry as well, not in the field of autism and neuropsychiatric diseases at all. But for full disclosure, I don't benefit from anything here today. But I want to thank you for diving in the deep end of the pool with us. To imagine that FDA would choose an autism spectrum disorder as one of the 24 of the many diseases you could have selected. Thank you. This was a huge blessing to me as a parent. Thank you. I'm very grateful that FDA is investing their time and their energy to help develop new drugs. I appreciate very much the complexity of drug development and the absolute necessity for sensitive clinical endpoints to find that are modulatable to treat autism and the core symptoms or the associated symptoms such as anxiety. So I applaud you for what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to how we will see fruition come over time. It will take time. There were just a couple of things that I wanted to respond to that you teed up at the beginning, and one is where in the spectrum do you treat? When do you intervene in the spectrum? And I think that's I found it is difficult just to say my child is low, mid, or high, because it depends which core symptom you're talking about. Is he low in the communication or high in communication? You've seen some examples of brilliant communicators here today, that patients that are here are able to speak for themselves. My child, very poor communicator. So seeing baseline move for each child is going to be so critical with endpoints. So I think it would be wonderful to see whatever endpoints we come up with, that you think of those in terms of change from baseline for that patient. And patient segmentation is going to be absolutely crucial too for some of these endpoints. I already spoke to the fact that anxiety can increase symptoms, the core symptoms, and can impair the ability of other treatments to hit the core symptoms. While you may be high on the communication spectrum, if your anxiety declines, you might not see that change. But for my child, it's dramatic. If his anxiety is low, he's able to communicate. So those would be good endpoints as well. Sensory issues would be novel endpoints, but I think you've heard too that there's a lot of different hyper, you brought it up yourself at the beginning of symptomology. These endpoints would be very valuable to monitor and be novel.
Thank you, Leah. I'm just going to have to ask you to wrap up. I don't know if you have any closing. Oh, okay. Perfect timing. Last, we have Stuart, right up here.
I'll be brief. Thank you for doing this. This has been very valuable to me as a parent, and I'm speaking now from that role, and I'm sure that other people in the room would share my sentiment. There are many of us in the room. There are many of us who are participating in this through the web, and then there are others who are not participating, people like my son. The challenge you have, and I think the challenge all of us have in the autism community, is to be mindful of all these differences and come up with solutions, strategies, product that help everyone. I'm always mindful of the split I have as a professional, someone who works for Autism Speaks, and as a parent. I'm always mindful that when I come home at night, when I take that metro train home, I'm coming home to a nonverbal young man with an intellectual disability and needs my help in the most basic ways. I respect your engagement with us on these issues, and and I'm aware that these are enormous challenges. But you are responding not just to a medical issue, but you're responding to our lives, and for that I thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. And so with that, I would like to call Dr. Mitch Mathis for closing remarks.
Thank you. Here's someone's watch. So thank you. This won't take very long. I actually had some prepared remarks and decided that I wouldn't use those today. This is very different than what we usually do in the Division of Psychiatry Products at FDA. It's can you hear it? It's kind of short. It's very personal, and am I here? Yeah. It's very personal. And that's not what we usually do. What we do is very clinical and very, I think by design, not personal. To find the answer scientifically is something safe and is it effective. But I think a big part of what safe and effective is what matters to people who have the disorder, people who are going to take the medication. And so I learned a few things. I saw Tiffany was taking just scads of notes, but I have a few things here I'd like to just mention. First of all, stimming, which is what a lot of sponsors would like to measure as an endpoint because it's so obvious and so easy to count, and you can show that it's getting better by decreasing. May not be making things better at all. It might be taking away one of the coping mechanisms that people use to make themselves better. So that's not likely a good part of an endpoint. And people with autism are people, so they of course get all kinds of other medical and psychiatric problems like all people do, and that if anxiety or depression is there, that's got to be sorted out and treated as part of making this better. So we'll pay attention to that. We knew that, of course, but now we'll never forget that. So thank you for that. Communication was a big deal, just from the surveys, and endpoints that look at communication with regard to autism should be considered. They're obviously a big deal to the community. Problems with sleep in autism look like they're a big deal, and big enough that we should look at those together. And I have, here's one. Irritability was perhaps not the best term for the approval of the few drugs we have to treat symptoms of autism. It sounds bigger than irritability, and even in the label, it said, we called it irritability, but we said it was destruction of property and harming self, etc. It's bigger than irritability, and it's almost insulting, I think, to call it irritability. It's bigger than that. So we'll call it what it is next time we get a chance with the medication. I think, and what matters most are the social and occupational function of people with autism. That's what got the highest score, at least. People want to be able to be normal. They want to function normally, socially and occupationally. And second biggest thing was with relationships, to have normal relationships. So thank you. I won't take any longer, but I do appreciate you being here. I know you have other things to do. Thanks for taking the time to spend with us. It's been a very valuable experience for me, and I know for my crew as well. And we'll take what you gave us today, and we'll be better regulators because of it. And I think better stewards of the public health, and at least for myself, a better physician. So I appreciate it. Thanks very much, and good night.
So I'll just follow up at Sarah over here. Evaluation forms, please fill them out. Leave the clickers on the table, and safe travels home and around the Beltway.